had to say it. You had to say it. I don't usually do that, but you guys are special. I'm not gonna actually sing it because I wouldn't. I'd probably start doing some kind of down home twang, and I've been in Texas too long. I've had too much energy drink. Hold on a second. Oh my god. So, if you guys are fans of Comic Book Girl 19, then you're ready for my stream because I'm not gonna. I'm a bit of a potty mouth and I have a bad attitude, and you know, so look out. Stream starting in about 7 minutes for real. This is the preview stream. This is like sort of the satellite feed before the actual real stream. Actually learned a Marshall Crenshaw song today. I was really sad because I just watched a video of him on Letterman, and he seemed so young, and he died. But he, remember he played Buddy Holly in La Bamba. It wasn't a big part. But he played it sincerely because that's his thing. He was a rockabilly, heavily influenced by 50s kind of mid to late. And yeah, he was awesome. But yeah, I really liked his song Mary Jane and Nine Others. I think that was the one that really got my attention. It's not an album that people remember. People always remember his earlier stuff, but I don't know. He had this quality, and he should have stuck around longer. He would have written like probably like a rockabilly opera or something like that at some point. All right, I gotta get off Twitter and Messenger and the live dashboard. Should I stay here with the live dashboard? Oh, I figured out the overlay thing. So nothing is wrong with your televisions. Please don't adjust them. Just messing with settings. Let's see. Okay, just wanted to hide some things that don't need to be here. And oh my god, yes, OBS. Oh yes. What are we looking at? Have we done anything with this? No. Alright. There we go. Hey everyone, do you know what this is? Good old Marlin. And we're going to look at some of the example configurations, more interesting ones. In particular, I'm going to go with the Creality ones, because those are the ones that I've been playing with, and probably the ones that many people will be playing with soon. They're pretty popular. Here we have, I'll just scroll it up here. I'm using the Retina display, which is maybe why it's looking a little weird. I'm seeing tearing. Maybe you are too. In the video. That's nice. Oh yeah. Oh, okay. Way better. Okay, it just came back. Let's not even look at OBS right now. Back to here. Okay, good. So we're going to look at boot screens, we're going to look at status screens, and we're going to look at the Ultra LCD. Oh, actually, you know, the quicker way to open things in this. Ultra LCD, the Dogum one, maybe. And we're going to look, I guess, at the configuration files as well. I'm starting a little early. I'm just getting prepared. I'm not getting into anything deep yet. So, fear not. I have the terminal open, though, if you really want to get crazy. Oh my god. Can't see a thing in here. It's ridiculous. I had this other screen up, but I got the sense that it was eating up too much computing power, so I killed it. Well, anyway. Hey everyone. How's it going? Good to see you. It's 1:59, 1 minute to starting the stream. Okay, good. So I'm going to be going over those little bits of Marlin where you can customize things to make them the way you want. In particular, your screen. Oh, there you go. Turn a light on, you can see me. Hello. Alright, good. I can tell I'm awake because I'm yawning. Usually I don't notice I'm sleepy, so I must be awake. Okay, here we go. Let's put this away. And go back to our terminal. I'm in, I should go to my, well, I guess I'll leave this particular fork open right now, or branch open right now. This branch is one that I'm working on over at GitHub, where I've enhanced the graphical LCD boot and status screens a little bit. There were some issues with the status and boot screens for certain things. If you had two nozzles, they weren't exactly right. They didn't have the numbers on them, some other stuff. So you had to have custom boot screens and stuff. So in particular, yeah, you can see here 1 and 2 nozzle graphics. So I wanted to make sure that that was taken care of. At the same time, this is sort of stuff that I figured out while I was screwing around with Bitmap Converter on marlinfirmware.org. Link in the description. The Bitmap Converter on the Marlin Firmware website has been getting some cool enhancements lately. I just added this funky field where you can paste either an image that's in your clipboard or text that you've copied out of Marlin. So you can do this kind of trick where you go to, like, say, the boot screen for some thing you've never used before. We'll just copy this block of code here. We go over to the tool and paste it into the field. And there you go. So that's the code, and now I can convert it in various ways. I can invert it. I can produce binary in the field instead. I can, well, you can see that it's sticking ASCII art at the end of the field as well, which is handy if you're using binary. If you're using just the straight hexadecimal, it kind of looks nicer sometimes. And of course you can invert the thing, and then you can produce output, a little more complete output for a bitmap for a boot screen or for a status screen. And if you're doing a status screen, well, this is a full size image, so let me choose something that's a little smaller. So I'll choose a file from my pile here, and I'll just pick this one. This is a sort of a status screen image, and you can see it when I load them. The original image might be grayscale, but I have it convert it into an image that looks like the LCD, so you kind of get an idea of what it's going to look like on the LCD. So here you can see that I've got a status screen, and because it's a status screen, it's 128 pixels wide, and so what I've done is said, no, if you want something that's smaller, you can justify it to the right, so you can set an X. So a status screen, actually, if you don't know what the status screen is, if you have your typical LCD display, and let me pull up, oops, not booth. You don't need to see my ant bites on my foot, but feel free to freeze frame the image. So here I have a picture of an LCD display as it's often seen after one too many, upside down. But this is like so the top part up here, this is your status, so-called status screen, and it's 19 pixels tall currently, and theoretically it's 19 pixels tall, and it's theoretically potentially the width of the screen, but it can be just the left half or just the right half if you want. So you can make one, but it's one image. And the idea was that originally I think it was a picture of a nozzle, and it was a picture of a bed, and it was a picture of a fan, and it was a logo image, optional, which now all the printer manufacturers are using, you've noticed. And those were optional pieces, and they were separate graphics, and because they were separate graphics, they drew slowly, more slowly than drawing the whole thing all at once, even with all the blank space, since you're just writing, essentially you're writing bytes out, just all at once, blasting them out. So doing it all at once was quicker, but well, I'll get into the butt side later, but I just want to tell you about the top and what the potential options are. So basically, by being a single graphic, you decide ahead of time where you want the nozzle, bed, fan, and all that to appear. So actually, you can totally rearrange them. If you would prefer the fan to not even be there, I mean, what's the point, right? You can have the fan and just the fan percentage, or you could, you could potentially go in and draw a bar. Right now we don't have a function that's like draw a bar, but you could just copy the part that draws a bar, do the same thing. But the idea here is that the top part is one image, and you just carefully arrange them, and then you set certain defines that say put the text here for this, put the text there for that. And if you had one nozzle or two nozzles, you could potentially fit, I would think, maybe with the fan out of the way, you could fit probably 4 or 5 nozzles across. And with the bed out of the way, if you didn't need that graphic, you could have it, do something like that. there's some potential there to mess around with the top. The middle part here is still, it's got a border around it now, you might have noticed. That was a recent change to optimize the display. Drawing black text on white was much slower, and it was causing more stuttering on your deltas. So I had to get rid of that as an option. So there's an option if you want to have it back and you don't care. You are using a Cartesian. By default, it's a box because it's better for deltas. But if you have a Cartesian and your machine isn't slow and you're not experiencing any kind of stuttering, then go for it. Set it back. And then other things about this display. Message part, we now have it scrolling. But the other thing about this is it refreshes once per second theoretically. If you turn the knob, like the feed rate will change, and what actually happens when you do that is it redraws the entire status screen, at least all the parts. Yeah, pretty much redraws the entire status screen. So this is one of the things that needs to be optimized. So I won't go into too much of how that's going to happen, but in the future, what I'm leading up to is with all this is that I want to make more optimized or more customizable and more optimized display. In other words, the things that this display has a buffer, so once you've drawn something, you can stop drawing the display and things will be fine. It doesn't it's constantly asking for new data because it needs new data. If you refresh it once per second, it'll be fine. That whole second, it'll maintain all these things. So the idea is at the beginning you can draw just the parts that are static, and then you only draw the parts that change, right? That's what you would think you would do, especially in a system like these AVRs where it's very slow. But originally the code was sort of slapped together to be to make it work, and it works well on a certain level. It's easy to build menus and so forth from a kind of a coder perspective. You just kind of, it's almost like a recipe. You grab something and move it, put it in. Feed rate, I agree. Filament feed. Well, anyway, I don't want to get off topic, but so the idea is that in the near future, it will be much more like you'll have this notion of here are the parts that need to draw statically, and then you only update the portions of the screen that are actually changing at any given time. So if the temperature doesn't change, you don't redraw the new temperature, and so forth. So basically each element would have a single bit in a bit mask somewhere. So you might have up to 32 elements on the screen, and each one has a little bit, and when that thing needs to be redrawn, that bit will be set by something. And so then you get to the draw routine, it says when you draw it, yes, redraw it. So with that, you could refresh the screen. Right now, the LCD refresh is, I think, something like 100 times per second. I think it's reading the encoder, and then it's checking to see if it needs to update the display. And it will only update the display in response to either an encoder event or in response to a button press, or in response to something that basically says the LCD needs to be updated. And then there's periodic updates just anyways, especially for the status screen. Like it just gets a periodic 1 second update anyways. So the idea would be, instead of that, you just check what needs to be updated, and you just update what needs to be updated when it needs to be updated. And if 20 things need to be updated, maybe you only update 5 on this frame, but then you come back around a few frames later and you update the others. And by a few frames, I mean, a 20th of a second, maybe a 10th of a second, but not so much that you'll care that the things are not updating all at once. Like one temperature will update here, the other one will update over there. It will seem more real time, and it actually will be more real time, and that's kind of the idea. Also, it would tend to make, you could potentially with that make X and Y seem almost useful, but then again, the idea, as I look at them, I just, I'm sure a lot of us shake our heads, why are X and Y on the screen? eating up all that real estate when we could put something up there like filament that's been used so far or something like that. So yeah, there's a lot of things like that which would be nice to just be able to just drag and drop and say, I want this display here, that display there. And if why not have the status display if you needed the space, take over 2 screens. It shows the one for a few seconds and then it flips over to the other to show you that extra info that you care about, whatever it might be. So there's a few options like that that could be considered with a little more work done in the code. So anyway, as it is now, if you look at, let's flip over to, let's see, well, from here, I'm going to open up the GitHub desktop and just switch over to the current branch of Marlin as it exists today. And this is taking just a little longer due to the video processing going on here. So back to this, and we'll just go to, I don't know, am I using that one? So if I pick these, maybe that's not the best example. Geez, none of these are good examples. Switch to bug fix. Alright, so just picking up the current bug fix branch. Okay, so there you go. So here's the current, status screen, boot screen type situation. So you can kind of pick out, if you squint, you can see there are shapes in the data. But if you really want to see it, binary is a better way to go. So yeah, that's why I did 2 things. One was add binary as an option for making bitmap graphics out of the bitmap tool, and there it is. And then of course the whole reason I made the paste field, was so that you could take something out of, well, let me just go back again. Go back to this ugly stuff here. And like, if you had a file like this and someone handed you this, you can copy the text out and yeah, go over here and we'll just paste it. There we go. And you can see, oh, it's the ender, so it says ender. You click on this field and you can copy it out. If you wanted to convert it to binary, which is what I did earlier, you would just take out the ASCII or whatever, copy it, go back, and, well, this is a status screen in this case, so yeah, so it kind of keeps it the same way. It's pretty much everything. Boom, and there. So that's how I did that whole replacement. I was just replacing each of these with a binary version so you could actually kind of see them. So the other thing is, with these, it's kind of fun because in this particular editor, you can copy blocks. I hold down the Alt key or the Option key, and you can drag a box around the text. So I'm dragging around just this part, or maybe you just want, this part here at the end. And you copy that, go back to the browser, paste it in the field, and now you have just the fan part. And the other cool thing about your browser is if you right copy, you can copy image. It turns it right into image data, which you can then go to your GIMP or other tool and paste into. Make a new layer. So you can see I've been using the GIMP to as my tool of choice lately, just because my Photoshop license expired, and I figured it was time to start using more open source and give GIMP a run. So it doesn't usually operate this slowly, but at the moment. So the idea was I started with some layouts and just came up with some. And I'll be posting a lot of these. The idea is that with this file is I'm creating assets that are common assets to the Marlin asset pile. which we haven't really had before. We've had all the binary or, the code, but we haven't had proper assets. So I wanted to make those available. So I was messing around with fan animations, and one of the enhancements that I was adding here in this bit was, more 3 and 4 frame fan animations. So, yeah, I have those now. So, uh, basically, it just looks a little better. Right now, it flashes back and forth, and I find it annoying, kind of, because yeah, I can sort of see the fan is running, but wouldn't it be nice if it actually looked a little better? So it should have at least 3 frames, which 3 works okay, but 4 is even better. So, but when I started seeing 4 frames, I was like, well, wouldn't you? That's when I started really wishing that the screen was refreshing more quickly, because then you want to see, you want to see a proper fan animation. So anyway, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Scott Latine, and I'm a freelance coder. I did some coding of Amiga games once, and now I'm doing coding of Marlin Firmware a lot, and things to go along with it. I did a lot of web development at one time as well, so I got some experience doing all this crazy JavaScript, and it is really fun. Oh, here's another cool thing I'll show you. If you do the ASCII art and you think it's going to take up a lot of space, you can use a narrow version, which doesn't look great in the browser, but when you paste it in here, it looks like this. So it's a little more, fonts grow. Oh, the machine is really bogging down now. It can't even increase the font size without going crazy. Alright, here we go. Yes, one more. Sometimes Sublime just gets a little caught up. But I do have to zoom. Zooming is important. It's important for the viewers. The other thing is that this is a Retina display, so it's actually got like way more pixels than it needs, in essence. And the result of that is that the broadcasting software has to do twice as much work. It either has to reduce the image, or it has to broadcast the whole thing and then let something else reduce it. But I think I squished it down, but it's pretty tight. Okay, there you go. Scrolling is actually sort of working now, so that's better. So anyway, with all that in mind, let's go back to GitHub Desktop. And nice thing about GitHub Desktop is I can undo all my changes from there, or I can just use undo here a lot, or I can just close without saving. I don't want to though. So which status screen did I want? Okay. That one, right? Okay. So yeah, so that was how I had originally didn't really know what this was, but yeah, it's the Ender, and the boot screen for the Ender, same deal. I couldn't see it, so the other thing, you can just copy the whole file if it's just one image, and paste it here. There you go. Yeah. So yeah, and of course, if you just want to see if it happens to be multiple images, then and they fit within 64 height, then yeah, you can just grab a few at a time. So here's a couple, and there. Graphics. So the other thing, of course, is with this, with the GIMP, you hold Shift while using the M tool and copy to your clipboard, and then you can just paste from your clipboard, and voila. graphics. Oops, non-narrow, so it's easier to tell what's going on. Yeah, so that is, it's hard to tell from that size, but that is correct. It looks a little weird drawn that way, but yeah. The main reason I delayed this stream, I was going to try and do this Saturday at least, but I started working on this, and I started running into all the issues that come with trying to paste things into fields and do weird stuff like this on the web page. So I put it off until everything was working, because I wanted to have you be able to, while I'm doing this, maybe try the tool out yourself, paste some images in there, maybe if you have some icons, or download some icons, or if you have a graphic that you want to stick into your into your 32 by 9 area here. Let's see. Actually, you have to click right on the pixel to select something. Otherwise, it's transparent. Oh yeah, that was the other real fun thing I had. You paste an image in a field, and it comes out all black, or it comes out all white. And it was like, what is going on? It's like, or, yeah, it wasn't random. So that was confusing to me, and I was like, what is going on? It turns out, stupidly, that the code was only checking to see what color the pixel was, but not whether it was transparent or not. So I had to go in and be like, oh, the alpha is 0, so that means it should be an off pixel. So yeah, from there on it was easy. Actually, any alpha less than half is off, and anything up, if the color is right, is on. So basically, yeah. So if you start out with a bitmap image, you'll see that the way I'm drawing them in GIMP is I'm doing dark on light, and that's actually the way to do it. Is you should do dark on light to start with, and then when you do dark on light, you'll see it comes out. That's going to look like this when it comes out on your bright LCD screen. And if you have a different color LCD screen, I'll add your color to this interface sooner or later. Yeah, the other thing I wanted to do is, you can kind of see, this is foreshadowing. These are supposed to all be pink in color, but want to have the ability to, on this, while it's on the status screen, you could, instead of just having this blank area of all zeros here in the field, you'd have the ability to say, oh, I want a bed, and it would add that in, or I want a fan, or I want these nozzles. But not just a bed or a fan. Of course, the idea would eventually be, well, why not have a picture of your status screen here, and you can just drag things where you want them, and pick from a list of fan graphics, or from a list of bed graphics. Like the bed graphic that I switched to on my screen, which I like, is this one here, as you can see. And it's just a little, a little different. Instead of the flat line, which is the old one, it's got that, more modern mod look. It throws off the centering a little bit, maybe, so I don't know, maybe move it to the left 1 or 2 pixels. The other trick would be, instead of having the little wavy lines on it all the time, only have the wavy lines when the bed is actually heating, right? Instead of the little dot indicator as it has now. And the other thing would be, of course, well, why not show when you have your leveling turned on? And that would be, maybe like this kind of indicator here. I don't know. So that was what I was sort of thinking. And then there's not a lot of room on the screen, but maybe a spot for your an illumination indicator, or maybe your heated chamber. I don't know what a heated chamber looks like, but that's it. And then an icon for your laser, if you're using a laser, that would be appropriate to have a proper warning on the screen. So got to have that. So yeah, I was sort of trying to think about all the little tools you might use and how those might look. So so the easiest way to modify stuff I found was, well, I'm going to be uploading the new code soon, so let me switch over to it. called enhance boot status. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So here it's all in binary, so it's easier to see. So you can see there's that bed there. And if I switch over to like my personal boot screen, let's see, actually, grab that Astro. And yes, my printer is named after a dog from the Jetsons. What of it? The thing was, I wanted to name. I came up with this really esoteric naming scheme. I was like, I'm gonna name my uh, printers after uh, dogs in science fiction, or and I was like, I was certain that I was gonna have dozens of names, and I would like, for all my dozens of printers or whatever. But sure enough, I've been having a hard time finding names. I figured, the first one was Millie. Millie was fairly easy because that was from A Scanner Darkly, right? Millie. And then Blood from A Boy and His Dog, which, actually has dog in the title, so that's a dead giveaway. But then I was kind of lost. I mean, there's Dog, you know, Dog from like The Last Man on Earth or one of those movies. I Am Legend. That it's not really a great name, so I don't know. So I went to Astro. What can I say? That's what happens. So yeah, so there's my current graphic, and then I have, I guess I have a 3 frame animation, so I can actually display that here because, let me see, 3 times 19, yeah, that'll fit. It's 57. Yeah, so there you can see my fan animation is now a 3 frame animation instead of a 2 frame animation, and this works better for me, makes me happy. It doesn't look perfect though, and also because again because of the refresh rate of the screen, I don't know that you can do very fast animation actually, really. But when at the current rate where it's 1 frame every second, it kind of fades from one to the next, and it looks weird. And like where these, you can see that the second and third frames have like this area in common, this big vertical line, and it's really evident. It just stays, it almost looks like it just jumps out at you when it's switching from one to the next, because this part's fading out and this part's fading in. And yeah, so I need to, I don't know, try it from a different angle, or I don't know. I've got alternatives here in the GIMP. Some of the fan animations that I've been playing with, just for the heck of it. And these are turning out okay, but yeah, so the question was, could I have like other screens? And this is, another thing we're thinking about, which is, well, yeah, when your print finishes, shouldn't you have like a victorious screen of some kind? So yeah, this was suggested, something like this. And it would say, at the end of the print, congratulations, your print was completed, and play the victory song, and I don't know, maybe some small little dudes would dance across the screen or something. But anyway, you don't need anything major, but I thought it would be nice, and it's a little more obvious, so from across the room you can see, hey, my print is done. It only took 3 days, and it's done. So yeah, again, you can choose a file, and that's kind of how I was originally doing it, was saving these straight out of doing export out of the GIMP, but then I suddenly realized, hey, wait a minute, I don't have to do that. I can just copy paste eventually. So yeah, anyway, it's working now. I'm happy with it. But yeah, this was the original idea, bring one of these in and start messing with it. and I figured you get about 40 pixels, maybe with one nozzle where things are kind of spaced out well. And that's the other thing that limits you is, of course, the text. Each character is 6 wide. There's going to be 3.5 or so, I guess, if you count the degree sign plus some space in between. So that gives you, 5, 10, 15, 16, 18, like 24 or 25 in between at least you want, to give some margin. The other alternative would be to have lines in between and kind of boxes where each little thing lives. That tends to look a little messy though. It's nice to just use white space if you can. And that's the other idea too, is of course with the screen, if it's flipping between screens, you could show, one piece of info per screen and switch between screens, and only like one of those 5 screens might have some animation on it. If you wanted to do it that way. Because again, it's no sweat off of, as it is, Marlin's already drawing like a whole screen, like every time it does a refresh of the status screen, so why not just but yeah, so the other thing was, you could go and grab the other stuff, which was the Dogum bitmaps file, which is all the default stuff. And so all the original bits are in here, and I changed all these to binary for us. So there you go, there's your 3 nozzles. And originally, some of this was a little buggy, so it's fixed up now. Hurrah. Arrow graphics a little fatter to give it more of that cartoony look. And overall, I've been trying to think of something to do with the nozzle because, I don't know, I guess it looks like a nozzle. Old school, the nozzle part of the hot end. And they do represent nozzles, to be fair, so why not just call them nozzles? There are things we don't represent on the screen, which like your steppers. What are your steppers at? But thinking also about debug screens and what we could do there. Anyhow, in terms of a how-to guide, if that was what I'm here for, I would say start with the marlinfirmware.org/tools/u8glib/converter.html bitmap converter, linked in the description below, and find your favorite graphical tool, whether it's Photoshop or the GIMP or whatever it might be. Draw things. You have 128 pixels across by 64 vertically. They tend to be a little stretched up and down, I think. I don't know. But if you draw it and it looks okay here, it'll look okay on the screen. I think the pixels are pretty square. We'll go with that theory. They're pretty square. As you can see, this is pretty tight. I have an example of, let's see, it's a 2 nozzle heading. Here's a single nozzle heading. Status message, there's that one where you have a little more space for your graphic. Here we have another alternative, sort of a little more spaced out, a little more relaxed spacing. So there's many options, and if you only, as it is now, I think one of the, it wasn't it. I was just looking at it. These screens are ridiculously set up where they space the nozzles way over to the left. So these screens take just as long to draw as the ones that have the 2 or 3 nozzles. So again, with these, it might be worthwhile to do them in 2 steps, or to just move the nozzle way over by the bed and leave the space to the left empty. Don't know why you'd want to have it crammed way over to the left. Actually, I think these are spaced over 9 pixels, as I recall. It's 9, and then I think I changed it so at least these ones with 0 are now optimized. But it was kind of silly. So anyway, I started touching this thing, and that's what happens. Don't let me near the code, or I'll start fixing things. Put away photos. Okay, so back to the code. Um, let's take a look at where the action happens, which is down in the dogem file, the Ultra LCD implementation dogem. So this is kind of a daunting looking file, but it has within it some of the draw code, well, all the draw code for the graphical part. So there's our init. We don't care. The one we care about is the status screens, or the what's called the status message. No, status screen. There it is. The status screen. So currently it's all hard coded where things are. You can change a few options and things will move around, or like the percentage will show up next to the SD card or whatever. But for the most part, it's pretty static. Some of the recent optimizations that were added, it now checks whether or not the segment of the screen that's being drawn, because it's drawn in segments, is actually being drawn now. And if it is, it'll draw the thing that's in that segment. And if it's not, then it won't bother to try to draw things that aren't visible. So that's good. So now it at least only draws part of the screen on each pass. So like you'll sometimes notice maybe the top and bottom aren't exactly synced. And don't get me started about the menus when you move the knob really fast. I will fix that. It's a regression because it was fixed at one point. Now it's back. But the idea will be to only handle events at the beginning of the draw loop, and then delay them if you're drawing the bottom half of the screen or whatever. They can wait a tenth of a second or whatever it is. It's not even that, it's like 100th of a second. It's ridiculously little time. So what I'm looking at now is the progress bar frames, so you can see where they're drawn. You can see a lot of these things are hard-coded. Look at that. It's going to draw it at progress bar X, well, at least that has something, and the progress bar width, that has something. But where it is vertically, 49. That's where it's always going to be. So you can see a lot of these things being hard-coded. You actually have to go in if you want to change these things and move them around, make the progress bar smaller. You have to go to line 607 of the dogm code. But you can see that at least it's fairly readable. It has things like draw box, draw frame, draw pixel. Inevitably, the idea will be there'll be a function or something for each of these little elements. It'll have like coordinates associated with it. Maybe they'll be hard-coded at some level, like you'll have defaults, or you'll be able to configure them as like it's kind of the way you configure things now, but with a different file. And then, but I don't know. It's the thing for vendors and such. It's sort of like, how important is it to be able to customize the screen? What I find is that a lot of vendors will take their fork and they'll just do their, whatever with it, and they'll just move on with that, and that's their fork. And so as they change it, they have total control. And I totally encourage that if that's the way they want to go. Start with a stable version, and that that the motor control all works and so forth. There's no serious bugs, and just move forward with it. But this hard-coded stuff, if you're a coder like me, it kind of makes you cringe to see it done in this way. But it's understandable. And this is incrementally improving. Now another thing I wanted to show you too were the settings that do affect the LCD screen in configuration.h. Oh wait, actually configuration ADV. Right. So if we go to dog LCD, down here on line 619, we find some of the things that you can hide and show. So all the things that are here now, you've probably seen these if you've poked around in the configuration before. There's a big edit font. There's which I was thinking it would be nice to have an even bigger font. but with only the numbers. Um, that would just, you'd only need the digits 0 through 9, plus minus, and a dot. And maybe if you wanted to throw in the percentage sign, but maybe it'd be half the size. But the idea being you could see the values much more clearly. And then, of course, other things like, shouldn't some of these screens where you're editing values also have like a bar on them, a bar that reflects the percentage or something like that, so it's more visible. And little touches like that are things that are very much on the mind right now, because it's sort of right now is the break between versions, and we're doing a lot of bug fixing, and that's all about making things better. And this is one area that has been holding off for a long time, but which I keep revisiting. I don't want to completely overhaul it from top to bottom, but, well, kind of. But the idea is that, yeah, we'll go with, instead of having we'll have these kinds of options, but there'll be others that will be more granular, um, and you'll be able to choose from a number of layouts at the very least, like compact, or ones that use more like bars and stuff, and show more information, like kind of a visual way. We already have some cool experimental stuff, not even experimental, just like using the graphical display graphically, like the thing where you edit the mesh and choose mesh points, and you navigate to the mesh point you want to edit. Like that's exactly the right way to do it. Like you don't just go, I want the third one over and the fourth one down. You can just go to the graphically. It's not like we have a touch screen, but if we did, that would work too. So taking advantage of the graphical display where possible. There is some cool stuff that probably can be done with at least not necessarily optimizing the character display, because it's working pretty well, but making just enhancing the character display. Again, it has the option of a progress bar, so that could be utilized in edit screens, and other little things, other little touches like that. In the bigger picture, and I know you're going to ask, yeah, wizards and guided procedures and more smart stuff, where it actually, you start up the printer and it says, "Welcome to Marlin. Please, if this is your first time, do this and this and this." Yeah, some of that is definitely in mind. I think one of the reasons that we've held off from that is that theoretical, philosophical idea that Marlin should be a sort of a hollow shell, a basis for building your custom firmware around. If that makes any sense. Even though it is like a big behemoth of a thing, and it's continuing to evolve, and it does have sort of its own life and personality, as it were. I feel like there's a whole aspect of it where it needs to be not just, yeah, customize me in all these ways, but also, and facilitating that, but then it should also carry with it, like, some defaults, or at least exemplary versions of those things. Like if you're going to have a filament change procedure, as we do, and we should keep improving it in ways that make sense and that make it easier for the user. Like in some ways, I know even I have been religious in ways that, and parochial in ways that I cannot abide, in terms of wanting to preserve this kind of purity around the idea that Marlin shouldn't do certain things. Like if you haven't homed already, then you shouldn't be able to do this thing, rather than having that thing initiate homing. In some cases, it would be jarring to have certain things initiate homing because you forgot to home. Like you didn't realize that you hadn't homed, or sometimes the motors go to sleep, and then it doesn't know where it is, it doesn't trust where it is, and And I've fallen into this trap. Like I've set up my oh, here's a good example: corner bed leveling. Right, I set it up so that it actually sleeps the motors at each corner. Total mistake, because the first thing you want to do is like move the bed as soon as you can tell that it's movable. And I do it all the time, and then it goes to move to the next corner and grinds the bed, grinds the Y. Or if sometimes I haven't moved the X like by chance, but the bed definitely, and that's what the first thing that happens. So yeah, so stupid little touches like that, more guided procedures, basically getting things more set up. Some of the stuff that's in the configuration.h file right now that you have to read to understand how things work, or read the website, which is basically an elaboration of the configuration H file, is yeah, it should be inside the firmware itself in a more embodied way, like a little more guided. Like if you we have the EEPROM, and it can we can keep flags like, you reset like you could do a super reset that would like clear these bytes that are way at the top of the EEPROM that say you've set up the machine, and you've done this procedure, and you've checked the box, and you also agreed to the GPL before you proceeded. Uh, all these things, whatever. You don't have to agree to the GPL, users. Uh, you can just use it, and if you want to do GPL like stuff, then you do. But there should be all this stuff in the beginning that kind of guides you at least, and makes sure that like for example, you could move the it could ask you to move the nozzle to the right, and then keep moving it until it's as far as it can move, and then you say, okay, is that as far as it can go? And you say yes, and it now knows how far your max is. Things like that, stupid things like that. If you want to know one of the things that we could add, which hasn't been added yet, but certainly could be, is to what's your probe offset? Do you know your probe offset? Well, if you don't know your probe offset, all you have to do is do a probe right now, with your, and then it could do a probe, and then it would say, okay, now move the knob until your nozzle is right on the bed, right? And now press go. And as soon as you hit the go, now it knows your precisely your Z distance to where their probe triggered and where your nozzle is on the bed. If it happens to be a case where your delta bot has the nozzle itself and your Z offset is a positive number, that's fine too. It can do that. Just hit the bed with the nozzle, and then after moving around wherever, at some point you move Z back down to the bed within this procedure. I guess you'd move up or down. It would start out by moving up so that it was away from the bed, and then it would say move down, please, and you would basically adjust it, and assuming, generally speaking, most of the time it would already be measured precisely. But the other thing it could do for you is like say, hey, I'm going to go to 0.1 millimeters from the bed, stick a piece of paper under me, and check that I'm at the right height, and yes, I am, and basically give you that whole procedure. Because right now, there are vendors who include a probe with their machine, and they know what their probe is, and they include a procedure that's perfect for their probe. Marlin has to do something that can work with whatever you have, whether it's a probe or a switch that you've rigged up, or whether you have a piezo underneath your bed that gets triggered, or or even a nozzle that makes an electrical contact with something. Whatever it might be, you want to have some way to calibrate these things that fits what we do. We already have all this mesh leveling stuff. Now the next step is to think about, take the step back. Okay, what is the user first approaching one of these mysterious magic box machines that makes melted plastic do? How do we make it go? what do we begin with? Where do you even start? I think for the most part, it's good that vendors are including an older version of Marlin, because one of the first things people want to do is upgrade to a more new and happier version of Marlin. And I'm glad that they do. I wanted to, yeah, let's see, get into the next thing, which is, okay, so, yeah, so all these are now reconstituted. You can use all kinds of good stuff here. Yes, you could invert the entire heading as well. That's another neat option, but then you'd have to draw the text inverted, and think I think that's slower. I think it's generally slower for some reason for it to do that, which is too bad. Yeah, so right now the idea is the heading can only be 19 tall, and it doesn't give you that warning if you say status. Well, I think it might. I'll have to check that. Let me double check here. If I go to status, no, it doesn't. It doesn't tell me anything like that. It just it lets you put in whatever, because 19 is the minimum. No, the maximum. Sorry. 19 is the maximum currently. Let's see what happens if I do this. Does it do anything like... So that's really tall. But if I go to status, yeah, see, it leaves it tall. So maybe I'll change that so that it... Well, the idea here was that, yeah, if you wanted to have your status screen have a taller header, you should be allowed to do that. And it could conceivably be as much as... right now it's 19, but you could fill in this space here as well by making it taller, but be aware that it's also going to be wasting time drawing this area here where the numbers are currently. So if you wanted to have a taller something here, go for it. Again, it could be up to 48, 56 pixels wide, depending on how squished your bed and nozzle are. Again, these graphics are not currently available, but I will upload them to be part of the Marlin package as soon as I have them in some kind of reconstitutable format that makes sense. As you can see right now, it's in whatever GIMP's natural format is. It's simple, right now just black and transparent colors, but it could be done all kinds of ways. And I welcome your suggestions for what kinds of things should be available on your printer display, and how they might be represented in ways that make sense. I've been looking for more ideas after bed is leveled, your bed leveling indicator. The actual reform of the LCD code should make it increasingly better, and we'll probably be able to do more sophisticated animations. There's no reason that you couldn't periodically draw one pixel here and there and have something that something that animates in a sparkly way. If you don't mind having a sparkly 3D printer. Turning one pixel on and off is not going to break the bank by any stretch, so we can do that a lot. Some of these bed graphics are silly, admittedly, but I'm trying to think of ways that you can fit in 19 by 19 this time, or whatever the small space is, enough information and useful information that that you can kind of see at a glance what's going on. Yeah, so let me see. I wanted to hook up my this little machine here. my iPad and go for using its camera. Yeah, no, not photos. Bifocals. We don't need you now. Yeah, we don't need you either. Thanks. I tried to tell you not to open, but you still open. Alright, I just want to get my camera. That's all. Is that too much to ask? Gave you a look at what this kind of turns out like once you put it on the LCD screen. You can show you my my fabulous 3-frame animation. Give me a second here whilst I pull up. Let's see, what's the best choice? I think OBS can actually give me a scene. Yeah, there it is. Hey, check it out. Alright, sorry about the... Oh, here it is. Hey, okay, so... Yeah, after customizing, you can see I fit my Astro nicely within 19 pixels. So let's go down to... give a little fan speed here. Alright. Oh, there we go. So I have it animating now 2 times per second instead of once. So that's why it's a little more lively. But yeah, you can see, you can tell it's rotating clockwise, right? There you go. So there, if you that way, you see now, if you set it to minus 20%, you would see it rotating the other way. Huh? Huh? Right? So there you go. So let me do a little reboot on this thing. Okay? Whoa! Oh yeah. Oh hello. Alright, I was just messing with this. That's actually my start screen at the moment. I needed some way to get a photo out quickly. I don't actually have a print done screen, but that would be cool. That could be done. That could be done next. Ah. Hey Jack, what's up? So currently, and I think when your print is done, it should play something like this. Right? That's good. Oh, the fan stopped. Okay, yeah, that's right. I turned it off. So anyway, there you go. So that's the general idea. Want to see it again? Check it out one more time. This could be you. It could have your brand name on it. Your printer farm. There you go. Yeah, so that's the general idea, is make it pretty. Back to our screen. Yeah, so there you go. Put that away. Okay. So I hope that's so far so good. Yeah, there's not much to say. If you want to use a boot screen, I'll give you the basic instructions. If you're here for the first time, to use a boot screen file, you take a file like these here and named _boot screen or _ status screen for the status screen. And you simply take that file and you just drop it into the root next to your configuration. And then in configuration, you set uh, show custom boot screen. And if you're going to use a custom status screen, use custom status screen image. And it will load underscore status screen. Just as show custom boot screen will use underscore boot screen, which will show before the Marlin logo. So you can see my boot screen had two screens, and the first one is normally your custom one, and then the next one is the Marlin one that shows the version, and then it goes to continue. But yeah, I changed mine to first custom boot screen, and then replaced the original with the print job done screen. And yeah, so there you can actually see it here. Job done. So I'll change that back because that was for fun. But yeah, so one of the other things I did want to point out was that your DOGM has an SPI interface, and depending on how nice your wires are, you could change this number to a lower number. The normal delay is 10 microseconds between bits that it's sending out to the display. You can try and lower that number, and maybe you'll see at some point it'll get glitchy. So when you see it get glitchy, raise the number by 1. If it's still glitchy once in a while and you can live with it, great. But if you want to raise it again, go for it. It totally changes the amount of time it takes to draw the whole display. So if you have a very stuttery delta and you've tried all the other optimizations and you really want to go for it, this is one you can go for. The other thing you can do is swap these graphical overlays of the clockwise, counterclockwise indicators when they show up. What else is fun on the LCD? You can double tap for baby stepping. Yeah. There are various optimizations in the firmware but a lot of them aren't really optimizations, so to speak. Like if you have the memory to spare, go for things like advanced pause feature, go for some kind of bed leveling. If you have the space, use up all the space. The things that you might not need are like the workspaces or like the offsets. Like you don't need home offset, you can turn on no workspace offsets. If you don't need a fancy version of G92, no workspace offsets is good. These things will reduce computation. Volumetrics, another one with no volumetrics, reduce computation. That's important for, reduced computation in general is always good. But as far as when things are just occupying memory and they're not being used at the moment, it doesn't matter. So like things like your filament width sensor. Well, your width sensor is semi-operable most of it's part of the time. But I would say that's an example of something which doesn't use up a lot of space and time, but there are some features that do use up a lot of space. They use up a lot of computational resources, and so if you can get rid of those and just keep the ones that are like enhance the user experience. Another thing, if you have the space to spare, more LCD menu items may use up more space in your flash, but that's it. So go for more menu items when possible. The cases where you won't have space to spare are going to be the original Creality board, where it's a 1280p. Unfortunately, only 128K of memory on those, and so sadly, yeah, you can't do much with them. So going back to Ultra LCD, the kinds of things that you'd want to change are getting rid of the X and Y on the display, highly recommend if you don't want to wait for Marlin to do it. Uh, maybe they're useful when not printing, and so you could add something like a little piece of code around them that says when printing, don't show X and Y. So let's find out where it draws X and Y. Let's see. Does it use current position straight up? Let's look for current position. Uh, oh wait, we want to do it in the dog, I'm sorry. Wasting your time and mine. It should be right here. Here we go. So on the first page it regenerates these strings, but then afterwards it doesn't. It reuses them. So for example, if you don't need your X and Y, you could be like, when printing. So how do you know when you're printing? Well, actually, there is there a macro for that? I forget. Let's go back to the thing where it draws the SD card box. Filament sensor display if SD is disabled. Feed. I said feed rate again. Sorry. We still don't know what that number means. Like on the screen, when on the filament on the front display, it's actually a feed multiplier or a rate multiplier. But I think that in CNC world, it's often just referred to as feed rate. So go figure. Right. So here's your XYZ, and here it is drawing X. And currently that's around line 730 in Ultra LCD. Impl dogum.h. And here you see is just drawing X and Y. So here we could say, are we printing? So let's see, how do we know if we're printing? Let me see. Percentage. Status line, that's too far down. Feed rate, it's too far to the left. XYZ, this thing is drawing in a strange order. What's this drawing? Elapsed time. Okay, this is more like it. Okay, if progress bar percent is greater than 1, that might be a good indicator that you shouldn't draw X and Y. Maybe. Obviously your print has moved on if its progress bar has gone. Here we are. So if card is file open when your SD card is printing, well, that's handy. I don't know if we actually checked for the fact that you are printing, but generally speaking, you can say job. You can check the print job timer, things like that. See if it's actually going, like active. So print job timer, if we check that real quickly. Duration staff. Come on, print job timer, where are we? Print counter, okay. Right, print counter, delta duration, no. Well, duration will tell you how many seconds you've been printing. So basically, if you get that you've been printing for 1 second, congratulations. You can hide X and Y. Yeah, and it's not delta duration, it's called just plain duration? Is it duration? Last duration? That makes no sense. Data? Print statistics. Oh, there we go. Data print time. There it is. Oh wait, is that accumulated print time? Jeez. Okay. I guess it must be just the stopwatch class then. It has all the important stuff. Okay. Stopwatch, stop, pause, start, reset, running. Okay, it is running. Hey, how about that? That'll tell you. So most of the time, the print job, like by default, Marlin just, I don't think there's anything that'll turn it off unless you basically turn off the print job timer entirely. But yeah, essentially, if it's ever up to 1 second or more, you can assume that you're printing. So yeah, we can go to Ultra LCD dog and you could say, yeah, if print job timer, is running. I guess it hasn't been used here, but yeah, so do that for example. And say goodbye. But you're not going to see that blinking question mark. I know that might make you sad. So print job timer is running. Hey, how about we just say if not running? Not. Hi, Mark. There we go. So now no X and Y, right? How about that? It's magic. And I guess we don't need to make the X string then. Either. I'll just trust the compiler won't call this 1,000 times. Okay, hey. Hey. Voila. You now have no X and Y while the print job is running. So in a similar vein, if you wanted to show something else there, like for example, maybe you have filament LCD display is an option currently for your filament width measuring tool. But what if you had a place to show your filament used so far, or basically your E accumulation? Well, as it happens, Marlin doesn't necessarily accumulate E, because some G-code resets E back to 0 on every layer. So in order to accumulate E, you would basically have to add a little code that would be a little fancier than I want to get into tonight at pi hour, 3:14 a.m. But I thought I'd give you at least a little peek at how to tweak code here in the DOGM, how to use the GIMP or your other favorite tool to make custom graphics that you can then bring into Marlin. And just to review, shift, click, copy, Bitmap Converter, paste, make a bitmap, copy it, and run over to Marlin and use it. Now these individual little bitmaps which we're making as I'm demonstrating, of course we don't really have a great use for them right at this very moment, but I really go ahead and start making them because at least make headers, make bitmap boot screens and stuff, because those are going to be getting tweaked. Those are going to be getting slightly more optimized, and we'll be having better, I'm sure, animations and other options for those upcoming. Again, it's 128 by 64 pixels of pure imagination. So what to do with them is the question. If you have any suggestions for the bitmap converter that I haven't already covered, please do let me know. Sorry I haven't been following the chat as closely as I wanted to. I had to put the tool behind me, but I will review the comments now. G-code driven screens. Ah, yes. Well, I think we covered that pretty well. The end of print screens. That was kind of one of the original suggestions that came out. That was good. I enjoyed that. Right, SP. Relative speed. I'll go with that. SPD or something. Yeah. Um, Filament feed. Yeah, I hear you there. It's all very confusing. It's all very confounding. I am not in disagreement. Let's see, going here. What are the best feature upgrades moving Marlin versus stock CR10 firmware? Well, the best options there are. Um, see, I'm being very careful not to expose my secret key to y'all. You can look at my page, though. It's cool. You've seen this before. And you'll see it again. I might cut out this last bit anyway. We'll see. Sorry. Well, I do want you to get your answers questioned, so let me question your answers here. Hold on. Yes. So yeah, the best feature upgrades. Well, you've got that 128K to fill up. So one of the things that Tim Hoagland has done is to provide some guidance on which things can be removed to save more space and give you more space for auto bed leveling. You can't fit unified bed leveling yet, but that there's a lot of text in it, and maybe it can be chopped back. We'll see. There's some other possibilities there because with that 16K of RAM on that machine on that board, there's an option to possibly move a bunch of strings out of flash and into the RAM. Well, it's a good question, how to utilize it. But anyway, I think it has to be at least in flash, if not in both. I'm sort of realizing that strings can't be moved to SRAM unless they can. No, I think we're stuck. We're still stuck with 128K. So the trick with 128K is, yeah, you can fit some leveling. That's nice. I have the here in one of the easy ABL probes. I haven't installed yet. I'm just waiting for the time and headspace to do it. So gonna do that soon. But I think that's a great upgrade. I actually did some manual mesh leveling of the bed myself just to see whether or not it really needed it. I'm like, this is a brand new CR10S. It should be great. But sure enough, it's kind of warpy. I mean, I have a new surface on it. It's not an unusual surface. It should be relatively flat. And sure enough, though, it definitely still needs some of that mesh leveling. So I have that turned on now. Let's see what else is good. Well, the other thing, of course, with the CR10S is you don't have to sacrifice. I didn't have to sacrifice. I have the full, mega in there, so that's 256K of space that can be utilized for whatever. So you can pretty much fill it up with too many features. I'm having a hard time filling it up, actually. One way you can fill it up is turn on all the debugging. Turn on pins debugging, turn on all that, and you'll have just utilize it. The pins debugging can be kind of useful. It'll lock up your machine or make it whine very loudly if you utilize it in the wrong way. But if you just type M43, it can be really nice to see what pins you have, and then mess around and what they're assigned to by the firmware. For future reference, especially after you've set it up and forgotten. Oh, hey, K9 from Doctor Who. Someone else suggested that. That's funny. But thank you. I'm not sure I'm ready to do K9. It's too on the nose. I mean, I guess it's a dog, technically, but I was thinking, I don't know, it's a stretch with Astro already, so it might be K9, might be the next one. All right, well, thank you everyone for coming to check out the stream. I'm sorry, was it, if any way, just slightly disorganized. I basically, with these things, you always assume there's going to be a lot more detail than there really is. So when it comes to this, like most of the detail that I got into with this tool was in the coding of it in JavaScript, and who knows, maybe I'll do a video on that just because there may be some interested parties. But yeah, I ran into all the limitations, and you can't paste an image in Safari, but otherwise you're good. Everything works, it's stable, it seems to be in pretty good shape. Um, and overall, everything works the way it should. The ability to paste old code is nice, probably now that we'll all be able to put binary in our code or whatever. You might not need that, but it can be good if you lost an image, you want to reconstitute it later, or if you've gotten firmware from somewhere and you don't have an image and you want to see what it looks like, paste it here. Yeah, but 128 by 64 boot screens, I encourage you to make them, and show me what you've done, and let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for stopping by, and as always,